All right. Good evening and welcome to the March 24th, 2014 regular meeting of the Waterloo Community School District Board of Education. I hereby call the meeting to order. And initially, I'd just like to note our board member Andrea Sparks is out of town right now, but she is participating by phone. So I'll try to make sure I move the microphone when Andrea is speaking. And Andrea, can you hear us?
Yes, I can very
great.
well.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll get to our agenda items. So now please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Now please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and now Board Member Shanley McNally will read the school district's mission statement.
The Waterloo Schools community commits to a comprehensive system of education and support to assure that each and every student will graduate prepared for college, career, and citizenship, as evidenced by continuing education, pursuing a career path, and contributing to a community.
Thank you, Shanley. And now the first action item on our agenda is a public hearing. We've got 2 public hearings tonight, and then our regular time for public comments, and that'll be later, but the first of our 2 public hearings is on the bus garage facility. The next public hearing right after that will be on the school calendar, and then we have a board celebration honoring Dr. Norris, and then we'll have the information from individuals and delegations. But the first public hearing is on the bus garage. This is Exhibit A in our board packets, and it starts on page 2 of our board packets, and it's for the purchase of real estate. So because of that, because we have a purchase of property, we have to hold a public hearing to allow the public to discuss this issue. And so I will first declare that the public hearing is open. Notice of this public hearing was published in the Waterloo Courier. This is regarding the purchase of property around Blackhawk Street to move the bus garage from, right now its current location is at the old Orange Elementary building. And the recommendation is to move it downtown to the former city, is it the city bus garage?
Well, it's actually the city maintenance garage where they stored trucks. Gotcha.
Okay. On Blackhawk Street, kind of right by
Yes.
the, there's the levee there, the dike on the river, just on the west side of the river. And we'll vote on that later in our board meeting. I guess that is agenda item H. But right now, if there's anybody that would like to address the school board about the purchase of the bus garage, now is the time when you can step forward to address the board. And seeing no one, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. The public hearing is now closed. Again, we'll vote on that later in the board meeting. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing for the school district calendars. And this is a time when people can come up and address the board on calendars for Cunningham, for all our schools. You can also speak later in the time for just general public comments if you want. But if you are here to talk about the calendars, now is probably the time to do it. I'll go through and get that hearing started, but just be prepared. If you do want to talk about Cunningham, now is probably the time to do it. This is agenda item B. It's on page 3 of our board packet. And it's required by law that a public hearing is held by the school board if a calendar is supposed to allow classes before September 1st of the school year, really the week before, or any time before Labor Day. So therefore, I hereby declare that the public hearing is open. Notice of this public hearing was published in the Waterloo Courier. The calendars that we've got in our board packet, and there are 2 of them. or 3 of them, excuse me. And what I may do, briefly, just for some background information for everybody in the audience, so you know what we're looking at, is turn it over to either Dr. Norse or Dr. Lindeman,
I'm going to have Dr. Smith.
or Dr. Smith,
actually
excuse me.
talk about the elementary and secondary calendar, and then I'm going to have Dr. Lindeman just mention the PLA calendar.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The calendar committee, which was representative of teachers and administrators and our association leadership, came up to agree with these 2 calendars. We looked at our starting dates, and you'll see it's a little earlier, but we felt that that would get us out at, it's 3 days earlier, moved it up, but get us out at a better time at the end of the school year. Someone noted that the elementary calendar is on trimesters, and it has been for a number of years, but you may not have noticed that. And the other calendar, the high school secondary calendar, is in quarters. Nothing remarkable. We took some comments from parents regarding the placement of parent conference days, and I think we've arrived at a good time to be able to provide feedback to parents and give them opportunities to make changes, and we can provide support to their kids before a grading period.
And one thing, Bev and Jane, I noticed on the secondary calendar it was really effective as a parent. I believe that the first semester ended on the 23rd before the winter break.
Yes.
And then the first the midterm ended the day before spring break. So
Yes.
we had a really good, I think, planning there to get those, all the semester finals done before break, and then before spring break to have the midterms done. So good job on that.
And Bev, I just wanted to say, when I said 3, I was just happy to see that we're still starting the 3rd week of August.
Yes.
So people have 2 full weeks in August,
Yes.
but I think getting out a little bit earlier will be a wonderful thing. So I'd give you guys props for getting it all in there.
So will this require a waiver?
Anytime
To
you
start
start before September 1, you have to file a waiver. So yes.
And has there been a change? I know last year there was considerable discussion about not automatically granting waivers anymore. What do we know about that?
Your hearing tonight and your vote will be signifying that you, as a school board, wish to start before September 1, and we have reason to believe that the department will honor your request.
Okay.
But you're right. There has been considerable discussion. There's not been substantive changes.
Okay. And then there's really no room for any delay there, particularly the first semester. I think we got caught this last year, did we not? In which we had snow days prior to the end.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were
And
in
that-
January, though.
Caused some disruption, I believe.
Yeah, I think the snow I think you're right. They were still in the first
Semester, but they were in
were in
January.
January
Mhm.
when they came out, because the semester didn't end. It seems like there's always the push and pull of the tourism industry. I think that and the state fair have been proponents statewide of not allowing the Department of Education to grant the waivers to start before September 1st. I also think, I forget the numbers, but I want to say it was in the high 90s, the percentage of school districts that start before September 1st. Starting before September 1st means you're starting in August when it's really hot, and there can be days then that you lose instruction time. Now, if you have a year, though, with a bad winter and you start later, it means you're going much later into June.
Right.
And you're going, it's a tough kind of, a
So-
lot of factors going into it.
So I don't know whether this is proper to discuss now or later, but was there consideration of going to hourly in either this coming year or afterwards, and what was the outcome of that discussion?
We've talked about that, and we think that there could be at some point in the future merit to counting our schedule by hours. However, it would require some pretty substantial changes in the amount of time we go. And we thought if we're going to do that, we need to just relook at the calendar in total. And I know there's some discussions about what we're doing on Wednesdays with professional release, and just bunches of things. So Jane and I took a look at it, and we do think the calendar ought to be looked at and look at all the things we know about it and would like to change about it, but we didn't think this was the right time. We'd want to wait till next year to work on it.
Okay, I would encourage that, because it just, I guess my bias would be that the school day should be the same every day of the week, and we figure out a alternate time to do the staff development. I think that simplifies it for everybody. And then lastly, even on the daily calendar, does our length of school day on Wednesday currently count? I thought there was a discrepancy on that.
It doesn't count against us. It counts as a day taught.
Yes, it does. It counts as an instructional day because we meet the requirement for hours per week in 5 consecutive days. So we do count Wednesdays as an instructional day currently. I think what you're thinking about, for a while there was just a little bit of a legislative oversight that said that if you went to the hours or if you stayed on days for next year, you would not be able to count Wednesdays. But really that was not from what we hear from legislators, that was not the intent of the law. It was an oversight, something they forgot to fix in their wording. So they came back and fixed that later. So it would count next year whether we were days or hours. But there's still that requirement of the minimum number of hours for a 5 consecutive day, 5 consecutive days.
Our intention would be to substantially increase the number of people, expand the membership of the calendar committee, so we can start having some rich conversations in the fall about the hours and days as in addition to our regular work.
And we did have that conversation and start that conversation with the WA officers earlier. However, I think there's a lot of things to discuss, and rather than rush it and make some decisions that wouldn't be best for kids, we really decided that it would be more advantageous to us. You know, Gary was certainly instrumental in that conversation as well, but to look at that for next year, but really start that conversation early, like September, to start working on that so that we had lots of input so that we could look at it for the 15-16 school year.
Yeah, it needs to be started soon enough that any contractual changes can be
Absolutely.
Yes,
can be
negotiate.
incorporated.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I would just, if it's okay, can I talk about the PLA calendar a little bit?
If you
or
could,
just real
and we'll
quickly?
go through that. And this is just to give everybody, because I know a number of you are here to talk about Cunningham and what that is, just to give you an idea of what we have on the agenda and what's up for discussion tonight. So we're not going to vote on it right now, but just to give everybody, so we're all basically on the same page. We know which information. So yeah, Dr. Lindeman, please.
Sure. The PLA calendar that's listed, which we will probably change to the SIG, School Improvement Grant Calendar, but this is really just a tentative draft of what it could look like. So the features are basically the same as the other calendars, featuring the same breaks, the same conference weeks, the same ending date. The only difference is that we would start early, so that would be in excess of the 180 instructional days. So you can see it was an idea to put in to show that the start date could be August 1, August 4, August 5, August 6. So that would be in excess of the 180 days. And then the only thing I would, just so you know, on the elementary calendar, someone brought it to our attention that we do not yet have the parent-led conferences in for elementary. And so I would just tell you that would probably be, if we keep it consistent, it would probably be August 28th. Bev, am I right on that? I believe that we
Yes.
usually do it the Thursday of the second
week of school.
So we can certainly take input on that, but that is the one thing that is not on this calendar. I wanted to make sure I pointed that out.
But doesn't affect the.
It doesn't, in fact,
No.
it still counts as a day, whether it's conferences or not. It really doesn't impact
Right.
anything, but I just want to.
We try to put it on here to advise parents.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we
Give
will
them
have it on
advance
there for
notice.
that. Pardon me?
It's not on the other one either. It's not on any of the elementary.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. That's, yeah. Yep.
So in general terms, last year's Cunningham calendar, I believe, started 4 weeks early.
I think it started about July 19th. That's the date that's ringing a bell for me. That's close.
So I
Somebody
think
might
it's-
remember. Is that why July 19th?
So that would be about 4 weeks early, and under this PLA calendar, it would start 2 weeks.
2 weeks. There would be
Early.
2 weeks with the PLA or with the SIG grant, we would look at summer programming. So really for, a significant number of children, it would be essentially the same.
Oh, so the special summer program would start.
Right. Yeah.
Middle
About
of-
the same time that the
in July.
traditional or that the calendar, their real calendar started this year.
And would that summer program be offered to everyone, or would just qualifiers of some kind?
Probably qualifiers. There would probably be some specific guidelines of students that we were working with.
And just humor me, would Cunningham be considered a SIG or a PLA school?
They would. Right now they're considered a SIG eligible school, so that means that we are allowed to write a grant and seek dollars for them.
So, the calendar that they tentatively would, if we change the calendar, they would tentatively go to this calendar, the PLA calendar.
Right, that is correct. Because it doesn't say Cunningham, but it would be for SIG eligible schools that receive the grant.
And
Correct.
would Lincoln follow?
Not Lincoln. The only other one that is Irving was a cohort 2. It came in the second round of funding, which makes it cohort 2. We just got word this week that they are going to, even though their grant actually sunsets this June, they are going to allow us to carry over additional dollars rather than hurry to spend them, which is not fiscally sound. So we will carry those dollars over. So they may have some additional days. We'll have to look at that to determine how many days they have. Even though they're technically done with their SIG grant, but we would be expending some dollars, and part of that requirement would also be to extend time for them as well. So we'd have to make some decisions on how much is left and what that would look like.
So this would potentially be Cunningham and Irving.
And it could, and it could be Irving as well.
And Jane,
Yes.
at the moment, for the calendar year for Cunningham at the moment, that is just 180 instruction days they have right now.
Correct.
And if they went and a PLA calendar would give them up to 187 to
190.
195?
190 days plus summer school, which theirs was a little bit different because they didn't have summer school this year because it would have started them in June.
Okay.
Because they start so early, we didn't do a summer school program for them. So it actually would be an additional learning opportunity for them that we would actually be able to do summer school.
Okay, and the PLA calendar would give them more student instruction days during the year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Lindeman, what goes into making the decision whether it's the 1st of August versus the 5th or 6th of August?
Right. When we write the grant, there's a requirement that we get input from a variety of people. So we would have a committee that's working on that particular grant. And so we would look at the data, there would be staff members on that committee, there would be district office. I mean, I'm probably going to chair that committee. So we'll look at that, and then that group will make a decision as to when that calendar would start, what professional development would look like. And then, of course, we'd have to look at funding. This year, for the first time ever, there's a cap on the amount of dollars that you can ask for. So we really would have to look at and say, here's all the things we want to do. What would be the cost of all of those? And when we add those up, if that exceeds the maximum ask, then we're going to have to scale that back. So that we'd have to look at all of the parameters. There are 10 requirements of things that you have to do as part of the grant. Did that answer that?
So the starting a little later might be required if you don't have the funds to carry school those extra days
Sure.
due to teaching payment, basically?
Yeah, right. The cost of teachers
Right.
during that time. So really, that would be how would we determine that? We would look at here are all the things that we need to accomplish, all 10 things, because you have to be able to show that you've met all 10 requirements in order to be considered for funding. And when you do that, you have to turn in your costs. So once the planning team looks at that, we would make a determination of exactly what day that would start. But we know it would start early because that's a requirement of the grant that you add days onto their calendar so that they get more instructional time versus the 180 normal.
So are our contracts, our staff contracts, flexible enough to allow those changes to be
Right.
made that late?
They are.
Okay.
And Dr. Smith, a question about the professional development. Looks like there's just 3 actually during the year, and then a couple before, and a couple at the end of each.
Yes, for a total of 6.
Is that about what we've had in the past?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it
Sure.
is. We also have, we've had money to provide either 1 or 2 teacher quality professional development days. That's a state allocation, so that adds to the opportunities for professional development.
Thank you.
Plus Wednesdays.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. The Wednesday early out.
And just a question regarding the calendar. I have been asked, have snow days potentially been built in?
No.
Okay.
We have opened negotiations, and we've started conversation around how we might do some of that.
Or at least designate possible makeup days earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, if you miss X number of days in first semester, those days will be made up at this time.
So in 15, the 3rd of April is Good Friday, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's an early Easter.
Early, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. And again, we're still in the public hearing part of this, and so now we'll invite speakers to come up. The board will still act on this. It's later in the meeting. We'll go through a couple of other items in our consent agenda, for example. But we'll go through and vote on that and probably have a discussion at that time too. But this is just to give everybody a background of kind of what we're looking at and what we'll be deliberating on. But at this time, we're still in the public hearing for the school calendar, so anybody that would like to address the board, now is the time to come up and address the board. Please state your name and your address as you step forward as well. So I'd like to invite anybody, if they would wish to come forward, to please do so. Yep, the green button there. Yep.
There we are.
Thank you. Thank you.
Christopher Chris, 437 Boston Avenue, Waterloo, Iowa. I spoke last time we convened. I had something prepared then. I don't this time. I just would like, basically what I wanted to reiterate is the opportunity for maybe this vote to be postponed. We as parents were not aware that this was even going up for a vote until about 2 days before intercession, I believe, or the week before intercession at Cunningham. And then intercession runs into spring break. That gave us 2 days, or it may have been a week and 2 days, or right at 2 days. I'm not 100% positive, but we were unable to actually come together to try to gather our data and what we wanted to present to the board. So we just ask consideration and maybe postponing the vote for us parents to be able to have opportunity to get together, gather data, present it to the board at possibly, another meeting. Another thing I would like to propose is, if that is not allowed, that I know years in the past, parents of Cunningham had the option of transferring their students when they were assigned as a sign-up school, I believe it's called. A lot of us chose not to do that, not to reassign our children because specifically of the Cunningham calendar. So we would like, maybe reconsideration if the calendar does change, to maybe have that as an option, maybe to go back to that, give us that option once again. So a couple things that I had. Other than that, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. And I've got those points marked down, and we'll continue to talk about that. this usually, the public comment period isn't necessarily the back and forth time for the discussion, but yeah, we'll write it down and get to both of those. So stick
Okay, thank
around. We'll discuss this.
My name is Corey Frazier, and I live at 104 Locust Street. Not only am I a parent at Cunningham, I'm also a teacher. I have 2 students there, one in 3rd grade, one in 1st grade. Looking at this calendar and looking at the data that they sent me, you want to start us August 1st, 4th, or 5th, or 6th, which will mean that the teachers will come at the end of July. Am I correct? Because the teachers always come at least 2, 3, 4 days before the kids do. Now, how would that be any different, 2 weeks difference, than us starting using our regular calendar and just adding days onto the regular calendar that we already have? Knowing some of the things that have gone on, I mean, looking at the SIG eligible school, Cunningham would still be the only one on that schedule, other than Irving, and that's only because they may or may not switch over money or carry over money. So we're still going to be on a separate calendar as everyone else. Still 180 days. I still do not understand, because it was never really made clear as to how it would cost so much extra for Cunningham when they have exactly 180 days. Everybody else has exactly 180 days. Why does it cost so much extra for Cunningham than it does for the other students? And another question I have is, how many people from Cunningham will be on the committee that Dr. Lindemann was talking about, as far as helping with the calendar and all that other stuff? Because as far as I'm concerned, and like what Mr. Chris said, nobody that doesn't have children at Cunningham can understand what our kids are going to need calendar-wise and know what is going to be good for them. So if we're left out, that does directly affect us. Should we not have some say as to how our calendar is going to roll out? And as far as the professional development days, those are cool. I understand that those are great. Those are nice, good opportunities for the teacher. But I also recognize that the teachers need to spend more time in the classroom. Because as a teacher, I have to go and stop my groups to cover for teachers who are in professional development with the math coach here and the reading coach there and all the other things. And their students are not getting the instruction they're supposed to get from their classroom teacher because their classroom teacher is not in the room. So that's another thing that needs to be juggled as well. So the summer programming, the reason why Cunningham does not have summer school is because we have intercession school, which is basically the same thing as summer school. Extra instruction given to students during intercession when everybody else is out of school. So why switch intercession school for summer school when it's essentially the same thing, yet it's given during the academic year when it can make the most difference? Because we tried the summer reading program as a title team where we had certain kids who were below grade level. They were to be there for 2 or 3 days, and it wasn't that long, maybe about 3 or 4 hours. We do some reading activities, work with their reading fluency, those types of things. We only had 1 student show up. We sent out the flyers. We did phone calls, visits, all of that to get kids to come. They would even get free books if they came so that they would have something to read at home. The parents were not sending them at that time during the summer, but they'll send them to intercession school. So I'm looking at the differences because I've worked in both areas, traditional calendar, and I've worked at Cunningham because I've worked at Irving too. So I know the pros and the cons. But I know that this continuous calendar has given my kids an extra boost. Granted, they have a mom and a dad who work hard with them at home. A lot of our kids at Cunningham may or may not have that because their parents work 2nd or 3rd shift. They can't help them with their homework. So they have more difficulties than maybe some other students. But if we're going to be the only students on this SIG calendar, why can't we just keep the calendar we have and add extra days to that? Use that money that way, because that will give a lot of our kids more security. And that's what a lot of them need right now. Thank you.
Thank you. anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and
Second.
Shanley second. Okay. Moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. That closes the public hearing part of this. But stick around on the Cunningham calendar because we'll discuss it and then have the vote later on in the meeting. We just have a couple other things in between then. And the next thing we have on the agenda is actually a very good thing. It's a board celebration. And this is a celebration. Miss Anna Mae Weems is here, and Tara Thomas is coming up to introduce it. She has worked very hard in our schools, in our entire community over many, many years, and has something to present to Dr. Norris, who is retiring shortly. So I'll turn it over to Tara Thomas.
Thank you, Mike. As he just referenced, we all know she needs no introduction. Miss Anna Mae Weems, she wanted an opportunity to come before the board to commend Dr. Norris, so I will turn it over to her.
Dr. Norris, I'd like to make a loan for $4,000 if I could, please.
Okay.
Well, I wanted some public endorsement around the room. I'm very happy today and very grateful that you've allowed me to speak. I've been working with superintendents of schools ever since I've been graduated from high school, and it's just automatic for me to be here. And when I heard that Dr. Norris was coming here, I checked him out, and I saw all them brothers he was hanging with. I said, oh, I can't get by with no mess with him, so I better be careful. So his life came before me. And at this time, I would like to, Mr. Jeff Zapito was supposed to bring the award, but he got a great big, I don't know if his wife hit him. I don't know if he fell into a doorknob, but he got a great big eye. My friend here said a car sales didn't go through, so he beat up a person. But anyway, he's sick, and he asked me if I would do it. I was glad to do it because I want to tell you, it would not be a Dr. Martin Luther King Award had not been for a young man you have seen up there, Michael Young's grandfather. When I was in Washington with the White House, I was working for the president, and this man prayed and came here. And while he went to my room as I was trying to get money for Waterloo, the first person I called, as I've told you many, many times again, was Mr. Olson of John Deere. I said, Mr. Olson, Anna Mae Weems here. I need $1,000. He said, what for? I said, I want to bring a man here. Waterloo got to hear this man pray. He said, okay, you got it. Next thing, I looked at Mr. Young. Mr. Young was my coal man. And I said, Mr. Young, I need $1,000. Mr. Young said, I ain't got no 1,000. I'm going to give you 500. I'll take it. Took that, and I called Buckmaster and some more wheels. And then when I got here, I had 3,000 some dollars. It only took me $85 to bring Martin Luther King here. But I decided that I would use it to pay for the food the next day for Martin Luther King's activity. Well, I'd call the ministers. I said, Reverend Jordan, get all the ministers together. I'm bringing them home to Waterloo. You got to hear this man pray. And so he said, okay, get them together. I said, I'm praying for the lunch, the dinner, and the breakfast. And he said, okay. I get here, bring Martin Luther King in here, and I called next morning, 7 o'clock. I said, he's here. He said, no, Sister Weems, we don't want him. This man is causing people to die and get killed. I didn't know what to do. Had not been for Monsignor Hagan and a couple more people, Martin Luther King would not be here, and Mr. Young. So today I have great pleasure and pride and grateful to God that I'm able to present some of these gifts. Bring the 5,000 first. I saw when I was in Washington for the monument meeting, I was one of the speakers. They had a thing there that says stars. And in those stars, they had a great big award and had all these stars like Martin Luther King, Sammy Davis Jr., and had Hillary, Magic Johnson, A.G. Gaston, Oprah Winfrey, and then it had Tiger Woods, and all these national figures. And I thought, that's what he should be, a part of this thing. So we're saying this is Iowa's first national Dr. Martin Luther King Community Education Service Award to Dr. Gary Norris. I said, let it be known that your proven and documented administrative leadership and talent here qualifies you, Dr. Norris, to join in the worldwide galaxy of other successful history-making stars. And it's signed by Jeff Zapital, Missy Tan, Secretary, Frida Weems, Chairman, and Steve Schmidt, Councilman. Something else. And then I have another one. I just want you to know personally, I appreciate you. I've been in so many times at your desk. I remember Liz, my niece, was over Cunningham School, and I heard she had been misplaced or transported or someplace else. And I was in Portland, Oregon. I took a plane and came here, and I called Dr. Norris. He came sick. We could all been dead, whatever you had. Whatever you had. He came with all this stuff across him from the hospital someplace. And we sat down, and they let him come out and deal with us. And he told us, let's look at this thing over. We looked over, and so I said, give her another chance. Please, that's my heart, give her another chance. And so he did. So I want you to know those kind of things, and this is your appreciation for your years of service and effort to support the African American community. Thank you.
Ms. Weems, thank you very much for coming in. And we, Dr. Norris will be with us here for a couple more months, and we'll have time for celebration as well, and a roast, too. And we need to have you come, and you can roast him as well before he leaves. Thank you very much for coming. Yes.
But he'll still be working.
He will still be working, yeah, for that. Yes. Yes, April, May, and June. Yes. Thanks again. The next item on our agenda is, this is a time for public comment and information from any individuals or delegations, anybody that's here that wishes to address the board. And this is a time we typically have during every school board meeting. It's an opportunity for anybody who wishes to address the board. There are a few qualifications, though. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, because Mrs. Arndorfer will hold up a yellow card when you have 30 seconds remaining and a red card when your time has expired. At that time, I will ask that you conclude your remarks. And please also keep your comments respectful and constructive. We're all here with the goal of trying to help our school children, so please keep that in mind when speaking. Please also avoid criticizing the job performance of specific employees of the school district, because personnel matters are confidential and they have to be handled in the proper forum and not in proper channels and not in a public forum. And finally, we provide this as an opportunity for public comments, but it is not designed as a back and forth discussion, particularly for items that aren't on the agenda. So with that, I would invite anybody who wishes to address the board to come forward and just state your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Chris Byers. I actually live in Cedar Falls, but I'm here representing the Waterloo Education Association, and I'm also a kindergarten teacher at Lowell next door. There's been a lot of discussion about whether to have School Good Friday, whether not to have a School Good Friday. The WEA feels it's really unfortunate that we were put in the position that we are right now. We feel it's a really difficult position with really a no-win situation. This all came about because a public statement was made in the media saying that it was already a done deal, that it had already been decided, and that was not the understanding of the WEA. We actually had a representative council meeting this evening, and I left early so that I could be here. We had quite a debate, quite a discussion as to what we felt was best for students, what was best for teachers, what was best for everyone involved. And we kind of came up with 3 options, and that's kind of why I'm here tonight, is to present the 3 options that we discussed at length. The first option was for us to just say flat out, no, we don't support this, because in the contract it does state that snow makeup days or weather-related makeup days will be done at the end of the school year. So that was the first option. The second option was that we could just make a blanket yes statement, we agree with it, do what you want to. But we felt as the WEA that that would weaken our contract and destroy some of the things that we've worked really hard for over the years to create. The third option that we also spent some time on is to say a tentative yes, that we support this, but we have a lot of questions and we'd want a clear agreement with the district in regards to some of these topics. These were kinds of the things that we would want to see before we said, yes, we totally agree with this. The first one is that we would be assured we'd have enough support staff in the buildings on that day, because we understand that the support staff, it's a paid holiday for them, and we know there's been some sort of agreement reached with them. But we would want assurance that there would be enough clerical staff, custodial staff, lunchroom staff, especially our one-on-one paras with our special needs students. We know there's some teachers that have already booked plane reservations for that day. We'd want to know how it was going to be determined who would be granted that day off and how not, and what would happen if we didn't have enough subs for all of those teachers to be covered. We're also really curious as to what the cost to the district of this is going to be, as opposed to just going June 9th. And I guess our bottom line is, why does the board feel, or the district feel right now, that it's important this year, as in the past, we've always just made those up at the end of the day, and why is it different this year than in past years? So that's kind of the statement we came up with.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And Chris, are you going to stick around during the meeting? Okay, and we'll get to that kind of, it might be at the end of the meeting. Yeah.
I noticed it wasn't on the agenda, but I knew it was going to be discussed tonight.
Yeah, but no, we'll talk about it. If you could stick around, yeah, just make sure to stick around, and yeah, we can talk about it later. Okay, thank you. And anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else, I will we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. And then just for your benefit, then we have the bus garage hearing, and then the school district calendar decision. But tonight, the consent agenda consists of the minutes of the March 10th regular school board meeting and the March 11th special school board meeting. Also, personnel appointments and adjustments since our last school board meeting. Bills due and payable between board meetings. And then lastly, the West High School National Leadership Conference in Indianapolis with BPA. And we've got students and the faculty advisor here tonight for that, and that's item G.
Ms. Winters.
So it's those 4 items on the agenda. They are, and I'm going to ask that Exhibit F be removed from the consent agenda, and actually probably G too. And if we have one more, then it doesn't really matter if we have a consent agenda. So would anybody wish that Exhibits D or E be removed? Those are the minutes and the personnel appointments. Okay, hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda except for items F and G.
So moved.
Thank you. And thank you. Moved and seconded. And any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The chair votes aye. Motion carried. That takes us to Exhibit F. It's on page 14 of our board packet, and the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the bills due and payable and the bills paid between board meetings. Get that motion on the floor, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Andrea. And second?
Second.
Okay, and before starting discussion, I will abstain from voting on this matter because as an attorney I represent a client who's paid by one of the bills. Any discussion?
Now that Michael's here, there's 2 items on page 16 for the Durham School Services. I think it may be about the right time of year to do a year-to-date analysis. I know it's going to be a little bit difficult because we reduced routes and supposedly saved. Hopefully, I think we did save. But then in the total cost is going to be the conversion of the routes from Castle Hill. So there was an added scope.
Oh.
So at this point, or I'm not sure when would be the proper time, but at some time in the near future, I think we probably need sort of a comparison is apples to apples as close as we can get to how we're doing this year compared to last year, and particularly maybe with an analysis of the excess hours.
Yeah, included in these bills, these invoices on here, I do have that up to date
Oh, okay.
to review over the current year and the three previous. So I think we can come up with a pretty good apples to apples and see where we're at.
Okay. So, thank you.
And the issue would be with Castle Hill is the numbers this year may be higher, but Castle Hill is now included, and that was probably pass-through money before, so that would be the apples to oranges
so if we
problem.
can,
Yeah.
if we can identify those separately so that we can sort of do a same school
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
this year versus last year.
Mhm. Okay. Any further discussion or questions?
Michael, I was just wondering, there were at least 3 payments, if not more, to the Iowa Girls High School Athletic. And what this time of year are we paying that for? Is it yearly dues, or do you know?
I'm going to have to look. I don't
Okay.
know that one.
Couldn't it be tickets to the girls' basketball tournament?
Possible.
I mean,
That's
because
very
if,
possible.
I know when you go to any state tournament, you write your check to the Iowa High School Athletic Association,
Yeah.
so.
Oh.
Except these are before the game. Yeah. So. 3-5. Before the game, so, yeah.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the chair abstains. Thank you. That takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is the trip to Indianapolis, Indiana for the West High School National Leadership team to attend that conference. Ms. Devin Winters is here, and she's coming up with several students, and I think a couple that we had last year before us as well. So I will.
I'm
turn it
Devin
over to Devin.
Winters,
Yes,
one of the
thank you.
advisors for BPA, and I'm going to let my students.
Hi everyone, I'm Romina. I'm a junior at West, and this is my first year of BPA. So,
I'm Shane. This is my first year in BPA, and I'm a senior.
Arden Elegich, second year in BPA and the current state president.
Joanna Badachevska, and I'm the reporter for the 2014-2015 school year.
I'm the other co-advisor, Sarah Levineski.
And we do have Ariane running for a national office this year. He is going to hopefully win a national office, so we're very excited about that opportunity. And I don't know if you guys want to say
So,
something.
as much as I'm looking forward to the National Leadership Conference, it is kind of sad because that ends my term as a state president. But I have one final honor I want to bring to the Waterloo Community School District, and that is to be elected a national officer. That is my goal, and I'm going to try my very hardest to make you guys all proud. Throughout the year, we've all worked hard, and at the State Leadership Conference, every single one of us from our chapter made it on stage. So that was a huge honor, and now many of us will be competing at the national level. So my national candidacy, plus all the different contests, we will definitely do our hardest and make you guys all proud. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now this, the dates for the April 29th through May 4th. Now, you'll be busy really every day.
Right.
It looks like with the agenda and the schedule, it looks like there's a lot going on. It's a pretty full agenda, but it's now like running for national office. Is that, will you be giving speeches? Will you be meeting people? And
Okay, there's a whole process. For one, I'll be giving a speech in front of 6,000 people.
oh, wow.
So I'm still working on the public speaking thing, clearly. So this is a little practice for that. Speech in front of 6,000 people. There's going to be a primary election, so I have to go through 2 different voting procedures. After the primary, it's going to come down to 10 candidates. After that, there will be caucus rooms, and each state has their own room. So I shift from each state, go to their different rooms, and they have a series of questions they're going to ask me. Answer all the questions. They have me for up to 5 minutes to torture me with any questions they have, and then I move on to the next room. I'll go through all the different states, and then they have their voting after that. So that'll be my election procedure. And then before I even start with all that, I have a knowledge test I have to take, and I have an interview by the entire board of directors for the BPA. So I'll be pretty busy with all of this stuff. I'm looking
We
forward
have
to it.
some pretty seasoned politicians up here. You might want to get some tips.
Yeah, the season,
Anybody want to come to
season
Indianapolis
part
with
is
me?
the correct part.
Do you have a campaign slogan or?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Double A all the way.
Double
Since
A all
my
the
name
way.
is Ariane Alagich, and nobody can pronounce that, I've come to accept that. So my
So do you
initials
have
are AA.
buttons, double A or something?
I'm working on buying some sort of campaign materials. I have not decided what I'm going to go with yet, but I have a limit of $250 I can spend, and I will be using that full amount to help get my campaign ready to roll. So
Last year they actually chanted double A, double A.
it caught on quite quickly. Let's just hope we can do that at the national level, though. So that is the goal. Double A all the way.
Great.
Well, you've already made us proud.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
Yes.
We made a little funny last year when he ran for state. We used the Energizer Bunny because he's a lot of energy. So he wore pink tie. And we kind of played on the battery, the double A.
Oh yeah. I'm impressed. Yes. Yes. I'm impressed. Thank you to all of you and to all the students. Best of luck. Thank you. You do make us proud.
Yes.
So.
We have some
Yes.
more going to that just couldn't make it tonight because of other commitments. So.
And Mrs. Winters and Mrs. Lewandowski, thank you both. I know
Thank
it's
you.
an awful lot of work to do, kind of above and beyond, but thank you for what you do. It should be great for the students. We wish you all the best in Indianapolis, and come back. Yeah, keep us posted. So. Great, thanks again, and we'll get the item agenda, the agenda item on the floor. And that is, the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve travel for the West High students to Indianapolis, Indiana, from April 29th through May 4th, 2014, for the National Leadership Conference.
so moved.
Thank you. In a second?
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. Again, thank you all, and best of luck. Keep us
Thanks.
posted. All right, then the next item on our agenda is Exhibit H. It's on page 29, and this is regarding the bus garage purchase. We'll get the motion on the table as Dr. Norris is getting some pictures up of this. Again, it's page 29 of our board packet, and Dr. Norris will give some background information. But first, I'll get the motion on the floor, and the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the contract for the purchase of the property at 1624 Blackhawk Street, and allow the president of the board to sign and execute the contract as part of the bus garage facility project.
So moved.
Thank you. In a second. Moved and seconded. In discussion for that and for the background, we'll turn over to Dr. Norris.
We have been, for at least 2 years and maybe a little bit longer in facilities committee, we've been studying how to bring as efficient of transportation system as we can have. And I think you all know, the public may not know, that one of our board members, Lyle Schmidt, has been really engaged in that, and we've all considered ourselves a team and working to try to do that. One of the things that I think you know is that the city of Waterloo built a new city garage and some of the city maintenance facilities. And as a result of that, they have a building that I'm going to show you a picture of in just a minute. They have a building that they're getting rid of, and we've been negotiating with them. As the board has aware, we've been sharing lots of land and other things as of late. But this is the building, the purchase that you'll be voting on this evening. This building really has, the property has 4 parts to the building. The part that you're seeing right there, the tallest part, is probably the newest, and it's the part that we will, should you approve this, we'll be doing the maintenance of our buses in this area. And it is an industrial building, as you can tell. It has large overhead cranes that we may or may not sell. There's been some expressed interest in them. Let me take you a little bit. We're facing south now on Blackhawk Street, or essentially south. No, we're not. We are facing east. Yeah, not even southeast, is it?
No, it's pretty much east.
Okay. And we're going to move to the left a little bit as we look at the building from a little bit different angle. And you can see there's plenty of add-ons to the building. Another area that we're going to likely want to save is the area up here on the left that looks a little bit like a one-story motel. That is offices, at least 6,000 square foot of office space that we would anticipate would be used not only for transportation but likely our technology department. It's really packed in there now. If you move on around to the Blackhawk Street side of the building, well, no, we're not there yet. We're still looking at that office from the it'd be from the west.
Yeah.
Moving on around to the Blackhawk Street side, that's how the office building looks from the street side, and that is the building we would recommend saving. The building to your left, the left of that also has the brick on it, is a much older and would be demoed. Going around a little bit more to the left, here is one of the original parts of the building that would also be demoed. The reason we'd be demoing these is we're looking for maximum parking space for our bus drivers. We need to gain about 100 parking spots. Otherwise, Blackhawk Street and that whole area will be impassable. I'm sure, I doubt if the city would even allow us to do that with all that traffic there.
Dr. Norris, there was some discussion about using this grass in front of this building. Is that still on the table, or is the city against that?
They have not. They've not said no to that yet, okay. Mr. Kinchy. We have identified approximately 100 other spaces, and I'll show you where some of those areas are. Moving on around to the end of that one-story area again, you see the two buildings that would immediately come down, and there's also this area where you see the grass right in front of the two buildings. This is also on-street parking that you can pull in diagonally or straight in. Lyle, Mike Kinchy, and Shanley are our facilities folks. Jump in if you. Now I'm going to switch across the street to the building that we will be working with the city, partnering on. Hopefully trading them some of our land for this building. We certainly don't want to get dollars and cents involved just because it's not cool for one taxing entity to tax another, et cetera, but this is essentially a vacant building now, and I'll work our way around that building. Here is a view from the corner of, I think it would be Blackhawk and about 13th maybe. And there's also parking under the electric wires there, the power wires. We could park probably 10 to 15 cars along that side.
Those front windows, would that still be considered like a break room? Is that what you had talked about?
We had talked, since we have an office across the street now, if you buy this building, those lower windows there would be a bus driver's break room.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought.
Here's a side of the building that we're still looking at. This is where they have performed some maintenance. The actual spaces in there is chopped up and not able to get school buses in there. So we would likely take off this little extra wing of the building. I'm guessing it's about 30 foot deep, but it's not, again, you just can't get school buses in there. Here's a building from the parking lot of the building, view from the parking lot of the building that we would be purchasing, and there's at least 40 to 50 spaces right there, but again, as we start to demo part of that other building, we then pick up spaces. This is a overhang that would likely be taken down the first hour we own the building. It's kind of rickety. We would park buses certainly along the building there. Here is the back of the building, and this was the sticking point, if you will. Our buses are 50-some foot long. Is that close, Lyle?
Yeah.
50-something. And we were trying to see whether you could make that corner either coming out of the building or going in. And I think it ended up working better going in, if I remember. But the issue that's in the contract right now tonight is a stipulation that says we need to work out an arrangement with the Corps of Engineers that, of course, is in control of the levee. If you look at the area where the fence poles are located, this chain link fence on the right, that's called the toe of the levee. And the toe of the levee has to remain open so that they can take inspection vehicles along there and check out the levee. The Corps of Engineers has, ever since Hurricane Katrina, gotten very picky about what they allow to be built next to their levees, because they were criticized for not checking the levees at Hurricane Katrina. So anyway, the fence has to come down. We don't need that fence there anyway. In fact, it's better without the fence for us. As the agreement is right now, the city would retain ownership of just this portion, so that the Corps of Engineers would be working with another quasi-municipal unit that could help enforce their rules. A little bit closer look at the fence.
Those storage tanks would be removed?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So right across the street from the building that we would be parking 33 of our buses indoors is Met, and this would all be part of a transportation compound, if you will. Met has been in all of our meetings, and we've been working cooperatively with them. One of the big areas we need to cooperate with Met on would be fuel consumption and washing of our buses. This is out behind Met, and that is the bus wash area. And to wash our buses, believe it or not, they would have to add about 20 foot onto this building, because the Met buses are considerably shorter. In the part of the building that's farthest away from the view that you have, they actually do vacuuming and cleaning of the buses. They remove the currency and do those things. So that's not all a wash bay. Part of it's dry space in there. Now, right behind this building, over toward the levee, is another, I don't have it right here, I'll get it on a different view, but it's another area where we can park our buses. This is where our buses would fill, right down in that area. Right now, and by the way, I'm down there taking this picture this evening, and one of the Waterloo School Board members driving that pickup is getting free gas there.
In a county vehicle.
Oh, in a county vehicle, okay.
That was a joke.
There is,
for the record.
There's some extra parking area there for both Met buses and buses that we have just reserve buses. And here's that area between Met and the dike where we could park probably 21 buses in this area. So the Facilities Committee has seen all of this laid out, and we've been back and forth a number of times. Now, this monstrosity is called the Salt Building, and it would likely come down. The city is looking at over near their site. Right now, they still... why is it called the Salt Building? Does anybody know? There you go, salt in there. Lots of salt and lots of sand, and it is blocking the parking of about 15 buses or so. Lyle's asked us to look at whether or not we could move the salt there and look at any parking of buses. We're going to look at all that. We're going to look at flow of traffic, but if we don't need it, this building would likely come down. There's not a great deal holding it up, and So, I thought you might like to see just some pictures of what we were talking about. Any questions, and I'm going to come back up there, any questions you have about the purchase? Lyle and Mike Kinchy and Shanley, what did I omit in talking about that?
The only question I had was on the time frame for this. Has the city moved out?
Yes.
They've moved out and into their new public works building.
Totally.
Okay.
Gone.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, they still had some snowplows and stuff, I think, in that.
Yeah,
but
there's
they're-
just a few idle pieces of
Gotcha.
equipment.
Okay.
Gary, you had made reference to certain number of buses being parked indoors. So I guess currently, how many are parked indoors at Orange? None?
None.
And then what would be the capacity?
Except if there was 4 or 5 in for maintenance or something.
Right.
Right.
And then the capacity here would be of our fleet, how many could be indoors?
33 of the 85 to 90 buses.
So about a third could be indoors. Okay.
And could be rotated too. You know, you could park some in for a few hours and then bring some others in, I think, for cold weather.
We also show on several of the plans that we've seen adding electric drops so that we could be able to
We have
plug
to.
in, we're going to have to plug in the remaining ones that are
okay,
outside.
okay.
So the blocks will be out there along that toe of the dike, kind of on that north edge of the property, just to the west. So
Okay.
So tonight, go ahead, Mike.
Well, between the buildings and the gas pumps, there was an area that has been, have some discussion. Where does that stand?
Well, if the agreement goes through as we've proposed it, Met will move a little bit into that area for their excess employee parking.
Okay.
And then we would have that area that Met is now using for employee parking to park our buses. The concern there, if you remember right, we didn't want to have the parking of our employees way from where the buses were stored. It would be 2 or 3 blocks.
Yeah.
So the key word here in this recommendation is, it says to allow the president of the board to sign and execute the contract. So
Correct.
am I assuming, and this is just a list of the things that I guess I would like to make sure we've got the I's dotted and the T's crossed. And number 1 would be that we do have access to that property between the north wall of the bus wash and the dike. Another one is that I assume this is correct, but the area zone both for the buses, I assume it's right next to Met, but still we need to make sure that that's true, as well as the occupancy of the office space. And I think, has the city already agreed to allow the driver parking on, is it 15th?
Yes.
Is
Okay,
that dead end?
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
dead end, to make sure that occurs. And then that we have the deal finalized to actually trade everything with the city. And I guess lastly, that we don't get any surprises. I'm not aware of other districts that have inside bus parking. They probably do, but I just want to make sure that we don't get into a ventilation issue or something like that, that there aren't some unforeseen or costs, because it's a decent payback. It's, I don't know, 6 years or something, which is, okay, but we don't have a lot of room for any extra costs that would come along. And so,
what I forgot to mention, and thank you, Lyle, the purchase of this piece of property is $505,000. In addition to that, there would be roughly another $700,000 to $800,000 of paving, demo, and the things I mentioned to get the electrical that Shanley mentioned. So the total estimate that the architect gave us for the entire project, including the purchase of the building, was 1.2 to 1.4 million, and we believe that that's a reasonable figure. The main thing again is demo, parking for the drivers' cars, and also the buses. They won't allow us to keep gravel.
No.
It's got to be hard parking.
And we don't foresee an asbestos issue then with the demo there?
You know, it's possible, but that was included in the cost.
Lyle, the other thing I want to add is that, and both of us, we all three talked about this, if the core comes back and there's something with that integrity of getting too close to the toe of that levee, then we're going to have to, we're going to have the space to turn those buses out of that building.
Yeah, and
that's included in this. I laid Steve Widener drafted the contract, and I laid it at your place, so Lyle, you may want to take a look
FYI,
at it.
I want to make sure we know that that's on there
Yeah,
too.
and I, if it passes, I promise not to sign anything until talking
we
to
get
the
those things.
facilities
But-
committee. Yes.
But-
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about how you're going to offset this over the 5 to 6, 7 years, and how that is paid for, so the public can understand that?
Sure. We have two. Well, there's several, but the easy way of thinking about funding of schools is that we have an operational budget which pays salaries and pays operational expenses like heat and utilities and floor wax and paper. But then we also have a bricks and mortar budget, which is how we build our school buildings and repair our buildings. And of course, it will be paid for out of either the PEPL fund, the Repair of Buildings fund, or there could be some sales tax money involved as well. But it will be our facilities money. And then it will generate a savings of about at least $200,000, and that's a modest estimate. It's a conservative estimate. It'll generate $200,000 worth of savings out of our operational budget each year, which is money we can put back into classrooms and use, not on transportation related. And then every year after the payback, roughly 6 years, then it is we'll net those savings in our transportation costs every year.
Majority of that savings is in fuel in the buses.
Fuel and excess driver time.
And
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically this was going to cost us $1.9 million at the most.
No, it's actually just 1.4 at the most, Andrea. The 500,000 is built into that estimate.
Okay, that's built into that estimate. Okay, I that wasn't quite clear
Yeah, sorry about that.
on this. Yeah, because I couldn't see how we were going to get payback in 6 years at $200,000 when it was $1.9 million. Okay, my mistake there. Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple other incidentals. One is that the current parking for both the buses and the drivers is not on a hard surface out there at Orange, and it gets pretty messy.
Yeah.
Not only in the spring or when it rains, but then when it gets dry, it's not oil. It's really a tree sap type material. So they put that. And of course, it's slopes, so there's puddles of that, and it gets anyway. It's less than a desirable current facility to keep the buses clean and safe.
The other thing I would add, there will be other partnerships that we can generate as a result of this. There will be likely some sharing arrangements with either the Met or city on some maintenance items with this facility. And so when you locate in a certain areas where those synergies then can begin happening. And we didn't include those in any of the cost savings, although that I think that when you look at this 10 years from now, it will be pretty obviously a good decision.
If the technology is able to relocate and save some space, then that opens up some office space in our other
Upstairs,
buildings,
Right.
our other buildings for other needs.
Well, and another thing, I think the safety of our bus drivers, in the bad weather, to go all the way out to Orange to get their bus, it's going to
And
be
then
a
to
less
drive all the
shorter
way back,
travel
yeah.
to go right downtown here just for the safety of the drivers to get to their buses. So,
And it will probably also reduce, I'm not sure about this, but the number of what they call park outs, where they allow the bus driver to just keep the bus out of the secure area, basically because the travel and the cost, the driver cost is so high. So a centrally located facility has lots of advantages.
And just for the public's benefit, I think that's where a lot of this started. A lot of things came together. But if you look at a map of the school district, the current bus garage, for whatever reason, I'm not sure what the reason is, but it's at Orange Elementary, basically at the south edge of the school district. So it's not centrally located at all. And this seemed like a very good time with the city moving out of this to look at that. And this is about as central of a location,
It really is.
I think, as you could find in the area.
It's
in the
about
school
6
district.
blocks from here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or discussion? If not, thank you to Dr. Norris, Facilities Committee, everybody involved in doing this. If there's no further discussion, I'll ask for a vote on the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the chair votes aye, motion carried. Then this takes us on to the Cunningham, or the school calendars, including Cunningham, which we've heard a number of people talk about tonight. So this is the action item for this. Now, it starts on our page, it's Exhibit I in our board packet that starts on page 31. And I'll get the motion on the table and then we'll start the discussion. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the 2014-2015 proposed school district calendars. Can we get that motion on the table, please?
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. And just again, everybody in the audience, what we've got before us are calendars, 3 calendars. One for elementary, which has all 11 of our elementary schools start on the same calendar. We have a secondary calendar, and that's for middle schools and high schools, so all 4 of our middle schools and all 3 of our high schools follow that. And then lastly, we have a tentative calendar that's based on the SIG status, the School Improvement Grant status. Just again for a little bit more background and to get to some of the questions that were brought up before. Mrs. Frazier, I think. One question was about the 180 days that it would be the same calendar, and so why move it up without the 180 days? The tentative calendar that we have shows student instruction days of 187 to 195 days. So it wouldn't just be necessarily moving the calendar for 180 days or starting in potentially the 1st of August through the, 7th of August. It would be actually adding more school days. And so that would be one difference from that. I guess we've talked about it and had discussions before. And this is a time when, if there are any other questions or discussions on this, we can get to it now. We also, I guess before getting through that, while board members are thinking about that, just to answer some of the questions that were brought up before. One question was asked to postpone the vote on it. One of the reasons we're on here tonight, I think this is a little bit later than we've had other school district calendars brought up in the past. And that, I guess, on Cunningham. I know last year it was a little bit later historically, but I think it was still earlier than this. And last year we went through, this is for a little different tack, went through a number, I think in the teens, the number of
19.
13. And so what happened the year before that was there was a lot of talk from, I'd say, the business community and the Chamber of Commerce, both in the state and locally, about starting school and getting to the question before about starting school before Labor Day and starting school in September. And again, I think in Des Moines at the state capitol, a lot of it comes from the Iowa State Fair and others really in the tourism industry for looking for both customers and also, probably more importantly, employees. And so what we did as a district was we had representatives from certainly within the district, parents, staff, I think all 3 of our bargaining units, administrators, but also had some people from the tourism industry come in. And I think it was an eye-opener for everybody that it's certainly not easy putting a calendar together. And so there was talk of moving the calendar back, moving the start time later, which a number of people wanted. Now the downside of that is it pushes things into June, and you also lose having the first semester in secondary school, especially high school, finished by Christmas time, which works some with especially dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment classes in the college level. On the flip side, starting earlier in August can be tough with very hot weather and a number of things. So I don't think there's any perfect way to do it, put the calendar together. I think the secondary and elementary calendars generally they'll seem to come together quicker this time. Is that correct? Okay.
We didn't have 13 versions.
No, okay. And that's good. I don't know if they're board questions or there were some other questions that I had written down from Mrs. Frazier and Mr. Chris. I may ask these of Dr. Norris or Dr. Smith or Dr. Lindeman. One of the parents was, I guess, it seemed to be more voluntary transfers. This is from Mr. Chris about whether the voluntary transfer process.
Cora's back there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and Mrs. Turner's here. I assume we have still the same voluntary transfer in the VT program.
Well, Cora, do you want to just address that very briefly, please? And I'll say that none of our students in Waterloo schools are eligible for SINA transfers anymore, so there wouldn't be specific SINA transfers that at one point, if you remember, 3 buildings were able to receive students, and those buildings aren't able anymore. However, we do have a VT process in the school district, and Cora, what are we thinking on that?
At this time, we haven't made any decisions for the upcoming year. What we'll do is complete our projections into each building. We'll look at the number of space that's available, and at that time, we'll make decisions on if we're going to have voluntary transfers. As I meet with parents, what I do is keep a letter or a request on file indicating that I will respond to them once we have a process and procedure in for the upcoming year, and I will also do that for Mr. Chris.
Okay. And does that happen usually in the summertime?
We generally try to begin that process anywhere early May, just depending on when we get all the projections done and when we know where we're going to have the vacancies at.
Okay. And
But
those
we clearly like,
oh,
excuse me, go on.
No, please.
We clearly like to get it done as soon as we can because of the issues with the calendars and where the students want to go to school so that they can begin and complete the registration process at the appropriate building.
Okay. And those projections are based on doing it for a number of years. If you have this many students in second grade, your chances are you're going to have 90% of them coming to third grade. That's
That's
sort of thing.
correct.
Okay.
The projections actually drive the class sizes within our classrooms.
Okay. Okay. Any further questions of Ms. Turner? Okay. Thank you very
Stick
much.
around the front
Yeah.
for a minute.
I think Mrs. Frazier had a question on why does it cost more? I think why does it cost more for the students at Cunningham? And I don't know, Dr. Morris, if you could reply to that.
And Jane and Bev jump in. We addressed this at the town meeting at Cunningham, and I. If I've ever regretted anything, I have regretted starting off that meeting talking about money because this decision, and I'm going to say it again for all who will listen, is not about money. We did mention, and I started off talking about it was roughly $65,000 to $70,000 extra cost to run not only the extended program, but the busing the way it's set up. Busing costs a little bit more, but we also at that meeting board said that it fully intended to keep that extra money, whatever it was, at Cunningham. So it wasn't that the district needed that $65,000 or $70,000.
Okay, in getting onto it, in the cost per pupil in the SIG grant would be the same. I didn't know if the question was going that way too. It'd be the same for Lincoln or Irving or Cunningham if it were awarded the SIG. That
The grant amount or
Yeah.
cost per, what are you talking about? The grant amount.
is it based on?
No,
are
it's
the grants
it's
based on
no,
number
it's
of
not like the
students, or-
TLC where it's
Oh,
a
okay,
no.
I'm
It's
sorry.
it's you.
Yep.
You can ask for what your budget is, but this year there is a max on that budget
Okay.
of 1.5
Gotcha.
million.
Another one I had, how many people on the committee would be from Cunningham if the SIG is awarded? And I guess, could you talk about maybe how
Yeah,
Lincoln
the
and
planning
Irving.
committees,
Yeah.
we had those for the other three SIG-eligible buildings. And, it really depends based on the size of the building, but I believe at Irving we had 8 to 10 people, but I'm going to tell you right now, more heads around the table are great. So, we had, I think at Lincoln, we maybe had about the same. At Carver, I think we might have had 7. I don't know, but it's 7 to
Okay.
10.
And it's a number of different people representing
Absolutely.
different
Mhm.
kind of constituencies. Okay.
So we're voting on the elementary calendar, but we're not necessarily, because of this tentative calendar, it's uncertain how many schools will be following the elementary calendar per se, right? Is
Yeah,
that
one or two? You meaning Cunningham and Irving?
okay? So this elementary calendar fixes everything for 9 elementaries. Is that my understanding? And it fixes the secondary calendar. Obviously, fixes it for all secondary. And so there's still a question as to whether the 2 elementaries, Cunningham and Irving, will be on this tentative or as modified
the PLA
PLA
calendar.
calendar.
Mhm.
So when would that decision be made?
The award grants will be awarded. I believe the due date is 15th of May, and we have been told that they will get the decision to us as quickly as possible. So you interpret that how 2 weeks, maybe. Grants are due May 15th.
Okay. Well, and we don't know what the probability is at this point, right?
We have gotten every grant that we've submitted, and we've had the highest score a couple times. So
Okay, so highly probable.
I feel confident that we can write a grant, and that's pretty conceited. That's very bold, very confident, but I am confident.
Well, I heard a couple themes so far about, and that was one of the issues was they wanted more time, I believe, on the Cunningham calendar in particular. So it seems like, assuming it goes through, this provides that. I would say we should maximize that time, and then even add the summer school, because that was the other theme that sort of came out, is that it's better to have the kids in school in latter part of July and August than not. But I think we also need to address this comment about the one student who showed up for the summer school. I guess I would challenge ourselves to create a summer school, hands-on, project-based. I don't care what it is, but it's fun. Kids want to actually come and do come, because it sets a mindset of what school's about, number one. And number two, in the past, and I don't remember exactly which of the after-school programs, but some of the students didn't like school, but they loved the after-school program. So that's what we need to, I think, start with. And I don't know, how long it's going to take to plan that, but something really that attracts kids, so that A, they come, and 2, and B, and enjoy coming, want to come to school, because I think that's a big part of the battle. So it seems like we have a couple opportunities here, and these extra days, I don't know whether they're designed to be into the normal school structure or not, or whether we have flexibility there. But if we have flexibility with those, I would also, there's something wrong when an elementary student doesn't want to go to school. I mean, there simply is.
How long ago was that summer school was offered at Cunningham?
That's a great question. I cannot remember. I think we did a variation of that with the parents coming, or with the students coming just a few days early this past year, but I don't recall that we've done the traditional
No.
summer school. I don't. Right, okay, so I don't think they've done I don't think they've.
Okay.
When were you referring to that one student came in intercession?
It was a reading Title I program that they told us we had to.
Okay.
Okay.
When we got the instructions to do it, first of all, we didn't have a lot of time. But we tried our best to get all the kids that were on our list there. We made phone calls, we
Yeah.
sent sheets, the informational sheets for the parents, everything. And my two kids, because I was helping to teach, we all took turns teaching, they ended up having to go because we didn't want the other little girls to be by herself. And so my kids went to keep her company and work with her and do the activities with her, so she would not be by herself.
I guess, and the other thing I guess that concerns me a little is that it may not be available to every student. I think it ought to be across the board because students also develop relationships with each other and kind of get settled in. So if there's any way we can, it may be a different funding source or those that don't qualify in some way, but really we need to look at each group of incoming kids in their own special way and their own special needs, but get them excited about school. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but there's a lot of fun things you can do that also involve learning, so you can integrate learning into there. We don't have a lot of planning time, but I would hope that we would spend, and maybe this is part of the grant itself, that we get those kids into school almost near the same time. The advantage of the calendar, as I see it, is this common staff time, common development time, and yes, there is a financial component. Any time you can have everybody going to school on the same day, or at least the way the buses run, they run 2 tiers. If they're only running 1 tier, it really costs the same almost as running 2 tiers. So any day you can run both tiers at the same time, it just improves the overall efficiency. And while that's not the driver, money's always a concern. So that $70,000 or whatever it is, hopefully can be used to enhance this summer school or make it. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at. Is that, as I said, it's not so much a calendar issue as it is a total comprehensive look at how do we get these kids interested, how do we get them engaged. And I think once you achieve that, you have a much better chance of success. So that's kind of where I'm at on it.
Looking at this PLA tentative, moving forward years down the road, there are opportunities maybe for some of the other elementaries to take advantage of this if they would then be eligible, and we would get a grant for them possibly. So this calendar could be used for more than just 2 schools in the future. Is that correct?
And Dr. Lindeman,
Andrew, I'm sorry. Jane was just. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. It's tough to.
Obviously, when a school is identified as PLA because of the way that calculation falls, that would not be something that we would want to have, so that we could. Now, that's the negative part of it. The positive part of it is that there's funding available. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. However, I would agree with you. Anytime there's funding available, we need to look at what we can do with that to extend while there isn't a lot of research to show that a continuous calendar or when the kids take their breaks is significant to student achievement, there is research that says that additional time, additional learning opportunities does make a difference.
So the summer school option is kind of above and beyond all of this for certain students that maybe if they don't want to get held back for an option, would be to go to summer school and get that additional component to avoid maybe some of the stigmas that are involved with getting held back.
Absolutely. And the state, incidentally, is actually looking at that. We talked about whether that could be a mandatory required part of attendance. The state is actually looking at it's in Chapter 62 of the Iowa Code, and that is actually the retention policy that's coming, the early literacy retention policy. So I believe that starts in 2017, that law actually goes into effect, so that children would, if they are not proficient at that time, would have to attend summer school. It would be mandatory at that point in time. So, you know, we can make it mandatory right now, that they would attend that, but that is part of the legislation coming up very shortly.
But that's a little different style of summer school, I think, than what I'm envisioning.
Oh, I understand what you're
I'm
saying.
envisioning a fun time, get acquainted,
Mm-hmm.
as much hands-on as you possibly can, not you have to do this in order to advance to the next grade. It seems like that ought to be, if there's issues there, that ought to be immediately following the school year,
Right.
not,
Early.
But we may be mandated to do that.
we may be, but all I'm saying is this is just a jump start, as I see it, to get kids interested and excited in there and into the routine, and also decrease the total elapsed time between the last day of school and the first day of school. That was another theme that I heard in the discussion. So it seems like we can address most of those, you know, they're valid points. So address most of those points with, if we structure it correctly.
And Andrea, yeah, I'm sorry. You.
No, that's fine. I haven't fallen asleep yet. No, so Dr. Lindeman, so with the SIG grant, there that would mean we can provide extra instructional days for our students.
Correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And those would be certain, but continued instructional days academically, right, with what they are already doing in school.
I didn't hear.
Such as,
She asked if it would be
In addition to, yes.
in addition to.
Correct.
yeah, okay.
And that gets back to the earlier question on just moving around the schedule of 180, and what we're looking at right now in the tentative schedule is adding student instruction days. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
and then,
you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I've been trying to jump in. My question is that this calendar is contingent upon receiving the grant. So therefore, if we're not receiving the grant, will we then relook at the calendars, or or would those two potential schools just go with the original, what the other 9 schools are doing?
That's really up for the board to make that decision. The recommendation would be that they become a consistent calendar for elementaries, one calendar for elementaries.
I guess though my feeling would be that with the 70,000 in savings or whatever, whatever that number is, and we're not talking about that being the driving force behind that, but that all of our kids in all of our elementary buildings deserve to be succeeding, and in that they aren't in all of our buildings equally, that perhaps we could look at, even without a PLA grant, we could look at ways to enhance and make sure that the experience that's happening at Cunningham, that those kids are getting, because I want them to have as good a reward, result as our kid in whatever building.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And I would say that even last year, we looked at general budget dollars to provide additional coaching. We contracted with UNI, and so there were additional things added even at that point in time without outside of the district funding.
Okay. I just want to make sure we do that.
So the summer school is not part of the SIG. Would that be correct, or would it be?
No, the summer school could be part of the SIG, because anything that is additional hours, we would look at. There would be some parameters around how that looks, and it certainly could be, but
But we could do summer school even if we didn't get the SIG.
absolutely, we will do summer school even without.
Okay, so we will. So there's
That's
going
what
to
I
be
was saying.
so there's going to be 2 extra weeks or whatever summer school looks like, regardless of the SIG. And if we get the SIG, then we're backed up almost to the original start time.
And one thing that she brought up with was having one student, for the summer school. To me, right there is saying, if we would be on the same academic calendars, we could collaborate with the other schools, and we could send that student or the minimal students and share schools, share teachers, share resources, because when you're like on an island by yourself, you're not getting that collaboration. You're not getting the opportunity for the other students to maybe go to Lincoln for a summer school program, or because if they were on the same time calendar, they could go to the other schools potentially, you know, if the numbers weren't applicable at that school. But I was, like Dr. Norris had said, I mean, the financial aspect of this is really nothing. I mean, but I just think it's the integrity of providing what's best for all of our students. And in all of the research that we got on this, and I read every single letter that every single person sent me, and I've done really a lot of research on this, and I know change is hard, and I know that, you know, Cunningham has been on this schedule for 12 years, but I read an article in one of our magazines that a recent study in the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center now shows that poverty outstripes race as the best predictor of college attendance and completion. And so the poverty in our district is a huge issue. Cunningham has 94%, Highland 90, Irving 91, Lincoln 84, Lowell 84. And so we need to provide the best opportunity for these children that are living in poverty the chance to succeed. And I think that working collaboratively and even having the teachers have the opportunity to work collaboratively with other teachers if they're struggling in what they're offering their students at Cunningham. On the same PD schedule, they could talk to the teacher at Lincoln, or they could talk to the teacher at Lowell to see what's effective in that. And I don't see that happening on this calendar. But I just, and then I think in my mind, maybe a change to the PLA calendar might be very effective, because maybe a change is what's needed. And then as I questioned Jane today, I said I'd like to see some data on what happens to the Cunningham kids when they go to middle school, because then they're on a traditional calendar. So is their achievement, you know, staying level, growing when they go to a traditional calendar at the middle school? Are there, you know, what happens when they go to middle school? You know, I mean, because then that's another change for the student. And I just think we really have to focus on the integrity of what we offer every student in the district.
I know you guys are having this big discussion about summer school. Now, your traditional summer school is what we do during intersection. We have more
Not exactly. I think summer school is in addition to the 180 days are there at the other 10 schools. And then summer school is added onto it.
And
Yeah.
our intercession is summer school.
Yes.
It's just during the academic year. So those days are added on.
But
And we have more kids that come to our intercession, aka summer school, than came to that summer program. Everybody's focused more on the one kid that's at the
yeah, but
program. But our intercession is actually summer school, and we
Yeah.
have very good attendance for intercession.
Okay, I think what we were going off is just the one student that came. I had written down summer school that came in.
That one program where they tried it that one time. But our intercession
That's, and you mean the Title I reading program? Yeah, and that was a clarification. Yep.
But our intercession is actually summer school, that is during the academic year.
Yeah.
So it does add on those days for those students that can come. And they love intercession. My kids love coming to intercession. They don't even do it.
And just to explain and kind of follow up where I'm coming from, we've heard from several parents. I've heard from several teachers as well about the calendar. I've heard people in favor of changing the calendar and those that aren't. I've also, and I'm sure all the other board members have read everything that we've heard and received from people. And we've tried to listen to people as well. I think all of us will try to do what we think is right for kids. And as I look at the data and also look at a lot of the research I did on my own, it doesn't point to having year-round school as a driving factor in raising student achievement. There are some studies that do show it. There are a number of studies that show it doesn't. And the most reputable studies that I found show that it's definitely a gray area. And that to me meant a lot. There are advantages to having summer school, or advantages to having year-round school. There are also advantages to having a typical calendar and having summer school and having those extra things. I would agree with the research that I saw too, that just adding more days in addition to the 180 is probably much more effective, is probably much more proven. There are some drawbacks to having the year-round calendar as well, and we've heard about that it's tougher for professional development and collaborating with other schools, with our other 10 elementary schools, that it's more difficult for people that arrive later in the summer to start school. If you do move into the Cunningham neighborhood, because we look quite a bit at the fact that there are more kids going out than there are voluntarily coming in. And some of those, it sounds like, would come just because they moved to the area, moved to the district later. And so if they wanted to start, let's say they moved in August 15th, if they wanted to start, it would be tough because they'd already be behind at Cunningham. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both. But I support having a calendar with Cunningham that's in line with the rest of the elementary schools that we've got. And I also support going for the SIG, and hopefully we get that and can add more days because I think right now that's the most proven thing that we have.
Could Dr. Norris or Cora discuss a little bit about students that are either opting out to another elementary or coming into Cunningham with its current calendar, and what are the options for those families moving forward if it went to the ordinary standard calendar?
If we went to the ordinary standard calendar, it would be considered the same voluntary transfer process that we would do throughout the district. If we decide based on space availability, then they'll make those decisions at that time, and then we'd submit applications for parents to apply.
So parents who were voluntary transferring out to another school for the general calendar would have the option of coming back to their home school?
They can.
Or they would have the option to letting their kid finish
Yes.
in that current school. So they would have options.
They would have options, that's correct.
And the same thing with going the other direction.
If we decided to offer the voluntary transfer program based on space availability once our projections are done, you are correct.
Okay, Cunningham does have additional space
Yes.
at this time now.
That is correct.
Okay.
There, and to answer, I think the first part of your question, Mr. Kinchy, I don't have the number exactly in front of me. I think there's about 130 transfers out and about 90 in at last count.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or comments or questions? Okay.
Could I add one
Yeah.
more thing too, just so you know, have the information with the TLC grant, we will have a 5-day new teacher institute that is part of that for new teachers. So I just want to make it clear that with the more traditional calendar, with the SIG or the other, we would be able to have that as a district rather than having Cunningham teachers have their own 5-day institute. So when I thought of it, Sue, when you said that about the professional development, we would be able to have that because we wouldn't be having it on July 7th or June 30th when the new teachers at Cunningham that would be the only time we could have it for them because we'd have to avoid the July 4th.
Yeah.
But this way we can have their 5-day institute with the rest of the district. So it'd be one institute, collaborative professional development for all, which is a requirement of the TLC grant.
So if we have summer school, I'm looking at this now from, there was also a desire to get the best fit teachers in front of each classroom. So we're not requiring those teachers to teach summer school if summer school is added.
Right, we do not require them. We look for teachers to apply for that, and we take the best fit.
So they could teach if they wanted to, but my point is if someone, for whatever reason, their own personal schedule doesn't allow them to start that early,
correct,
they could still teach, but they would be required to begin with the PLA date.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And that's why if any building goes to PLA status and the calendar is moved up from what their normal contract says, teachers have options. If for whatever personal reasons they can't start that early, we allow them to transfer to other buildings as well.
Yeah, that happened just a few years ago with Lincoln, I
Right.
know, because I know how much time you spent and your staff did meeting with those teachers.
Right.
And Irving as well.
And Irving, yeah.
And for the calendar committee, wouldn't a perfect goal be to have no PLA schools so that we could have one calendar?
Any further questions or discussion? Okay, then we will vote on the motion. Do a roll call. That the recommended motion is to approve the calendars as presented on the board packet. Let's call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us on to the next item on our agenda. The agenda tonight. And this is the first part of our budget process. This is Exhibit J, which starts on page 46 of the board packet. And this starts the budget process, and it's setting the property tax rate and also the school district budget. The recommended motion that we're handing out right now, actually, while we'll hand this out, I'll just give some background information on it. This is the first part of the process that we go through every year to set the school district budget. And the recommended motion, this is Exhibit J, starts on page 34, and on page 35 is our motion. And the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the budget expenditure estimate and the tax levy rate for publication and set the public hearing for the 2014-2015 certified budget at 6 o'clock p.m. on April 14th, 2014. If we get that motion on the table, and then we'll finish with the background. Thank you. And second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Michael Coughlin is here, and he's just handed out some information on our certified budget and then the property tax rate. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Coughlin.
I'm going to start out with a disclaimer that I have hardly any voice and have had a bad cough for quite a while, so I'm going to try to make this as abbreviated as possible. We have discussed this pretty thoroughly at the Finance Committee, but I am giving you the PowerPoint that I'm just going to refer to things as we go through it. You can certainly review it and ask me questions in between. This is just the action for the board to approve a tax rate and total expenditures and the date of the budget hearing. And then it will be published in the paper, and then you'll do final approval on April 14th. So this is, as Mike Young said, a preliminary step. And whatever we publish, it can be changed to a lesser amount at the April 14th meeting, and then actually in early May, you have one more opportunity if something comes up that changes the point of view. You have that opportunity before it goes to the county auditor. So I'm going to refer to page numbers in the top and bottom slide as we go through, and I just want to identify some things that are major components of the budget. Enrollment, obviously, on page 1, and you can see the trend moving in a positive direction. Page 2, the unspent balance, which is our authority, and these tables all have the completion of 10, 11, 12, and 13 as actuals, and then 14 as a projection of where we're going to be. So the unspent balance is the authority. The solvency ratio at the bottom of 2 is the cash in hand at the time. after all the bills are paid, and that did take a dip at the end of 13. We have addressed those issues, and I'm expecting a good recovery in 14 and 15. Kind of a relationship slide on on page 3.
Or verse 3.
Thank you, Pastor Coughlin.
Jane's been talking to me today. I've got that in my head, so. Page 3 at the top, this is a relationship between cash actually in the bank on June 30th, the yellow, and that's going to be high because we haven't actually paid the July and August paycheck. So that's going to sit high. But one that's really kind of the relationship is the USB, or the unspent allowable, the unspent authority, unspent authority, and the fund balance. So those are kind of two that should be at least equal, if not the fund balance being higher than the unspent authority. So we're getting close. We'd expect it to be a lot closer at the end of 14. Hopefully we can continue that in a positive manner. So as we get into the budget for 2014-15, all of the funds are listed there: general fund, management fund, PEPL, unvoted PEPL are the main both voted and unvoted PEPL are the main tax funds that deal with it, but we also document the money that comes in for the 1-cent sales tax. Fund 40 is just the fund that we have to use to actually make bond payments, and then the student activity and the lunch fund. So how the major components of the budget on page 5 are the major components of what makes up the budget, the revenue that we have to work with, starts out with a combined district cost plus the instructional support levy. We have state voluntary pre-K, miscellaneous income, and then add to it the prior year unspent balance of authority. And that gives us the total budget to work with. So the bottom slide on 5 is dealing with what makes up the combined district cost. That's the main number. That's our enrollment times the cost per pupil. And I'll show you some numbers a little later. Then it also has included in that supplementary weighting like ELA, ELL, and supplementary at-risk. Then there's all the special ed weighting, the teacher salary supplement, the teacher leadership money will be in this section a year from now. It's just miscellaneous income this year, but it is being put into the actual formula for starting next year. So the grant we got this year will continue each year as part of the regular formula. Then we have the AEA costs and the dropout at risk program. The instructional support levy is based on 10% of our regular program district cost, which is enrollment times cost per pupil, which should be $6,997,000. But because the state did not allocate enough money and no longer pays anything toward that, it is just the district portion of $4,742,41 that we are able to fund with the instructional support levy. As you see, it's a levy that the board enacts each 5 years by board action, and the current program expires at the end of 2015-16, so we will be dealing with that in the near future. Another component is miscellaneous income, and that's federal, state, and local grants, and other money that comes in. I have them listed examples on the top of page 7, and you can see that the TLC for 15 is in that category. And will be in the regular formula starting in 16. So on the bottom of page 7, you have a comparison between 13-14 on the far right and 14-15 coming up with our new numbers. The program district cost is made up of cost per pupil times enrollment, $69.9 million, then supplementary weighting, special ed, teacher salary supplement, AEA, SBRC growth, dropout program, and you can see how much those have changed from one year to the next. Total changing from 99.7 to 104, 849,000. The total spending authority is then taking that total forward and adding the prior year unspent balance, the instructional support program that I just discussed, the preschool state aid, and last year's was a little higher because we were a year behind in getting the money to count. We had to wait a year for that, but we started the program this year. So the 1.6 will be a more normal number that we'll see each year if the enrollment stays relatively the same. The miscellaneous is going up about $3 million in estimation this year, and the majority of that is the TLC grant. So that is included in the 19 million. So you can see the total budget authorities going from 131.6 to $140 million just in the general fund. Now, the reason I started out with the balances is that's all not great news that we just have that much more money to spend. We have basically deficit spending to make up from last year, which we did on purpose as we were investing in student achievement and instructional coaches, and that was the intent, that we were going to overspend our budget in 13. So we need to flatten that out. We are doing that in 14, and as we go into 15, we will use this additional authority to build on that. It was always the plan that part of the TLC money would be used for some instructional coach positions that we already have. So we kind of bought ahead, and now we have to cover some of those expenses. That's part of how it's going to be used. Revenue sources, one thing I just wanted to mention as we talk about cash reserve and how we do that on page 9. In the 2009 and 2011 budget, we received allowable growth from the legislative budget, and then during the year there was across-the-board cuts, and that was to the tune of $10.9 million. And at that time we said there's no way we can build all that back in 1 year, and actually, as you see the table below, if we would levy $1.6 million this year, we would make that up, and it would take 7 years to do that. That is not the recommendation, and we'll see that in a little bit, but I'm just trying to show how we have spread that over several years. So if you think about it, our solvency ratio would have been $11 million better 7 years ago. And we would have carried that $11 million on our balance all of those years. So for our solvency ratio to dip, there was reason for that, and we've been dealing with that in different ways as we have been doing our budget and dealing with the priorities of the district. On 10...
But wait a minute.
Yes.
The cash reserve levies on 9, those are actual except for 14, 15?
Correct.
And the cumulative, that means we don't have spending authority for that?
We have no spending authority for that. We already got it when they gave us the allowable growth back in 9 and 11, but then they just didn't send us the cash for it. So our unspent balance did not suffer for that. Our cash and solvency ratio suffered for that. Okay. So page 10, this is a 7-year history of what our tax rate has been. Starting in 2008 at 1675, and in 14 we levied 1573. History of taxable valuation, showing that this year because it has been made a significant impact on our decision tonight, because in all the years have been here, 7 years. This year is the first year that it has not grown at all. In fact, it's been a negative of 3%. So you can see how that would have an impact, because if we have more students generating more money and we have a lower tax valuation, that means our tax rate should go up.
So what segments did that lower tax valuation result from?
Page 11.
Sorry.
I think the big was.
How's that loud?
But the short it looks like commercial property was probably the biggest hit, and then residential slightly. Just residential so big it was a slight decrease, but it's so big that it's everything. But commercial was huge.
So it was, the biggest change was the commercial and industrial as far as dollar amounts and the amount of drop, and that was the rollback from 100% to 95%.
So the value of the property itself went down 7%?
Of that segment of the total valuation, if you look at the bottom of there, the total taxable value is $2,606,000,000, and that went down 3.12%. But within all of the areas up above, you can see where the changes really were.
And Mike, as I understand it, it isn't all residential went down. Some goes down, some goes up, and that's the average. Or the offset is the negative 0.
So residential stayed pretty flat.
Yeah.
And where something like ag buildings is 11% down, there was only 3 million anyway, so
Yeah.
it's a drop in the bucket.
But we could add, to stay even on residential property, which is most people's concern, it would only merit a plus 0.8% increase in rate.
If everything was the same.
Yeah.
But we've increased number of kids, cost per pupil.
Yeah, but from a taxpayer standpoint, the average value of residential property went down 0.8%. So if the rate went up 0.8%.
Let me show you an example, and we can talk about it a little further, but I understand your question. And it's always interesting to sit down here in the middle and come into a presentation and find out one of your most important numbers are wrong. You didn't update. So on the bottom of page 11, and I'll get into a little more explanation of it, the proposed property tax levy recommendation from the Finance Committee is to put it at $15.98, raising $41,393,300. No, that's not right. $42,243,348, which is less than what we levied last year. So let's get into some of the details of that, of how it affects taxpayers. So if you look at page 12.
And with that being said, that is the highest. We can go lower,
if
but
that's what we publish,
Yeah,
it
if-
can be lowered.
Yeah, but that would be the very highest. We
Yeah,
can't go
couldn't-
higher.
We could not raise it.
Correct. All right, thank you.
So just a summary of what the rollbacks have done, the residential, commercial, and ag. Ag, quite a significant drop. Commercial, because of its value, has a significant change. But I want to say that now before I forget about it. The 5% drop that we would not be collecting because of this rollback, the state is covering that amount. It's about $750,000 that we're losing because of the rollback, but the state is covering it as part of allowable gross state aid.
On just the commercial.
Commercial, industrial. Yeah, just that one. The rollback on the other two, they are not addressing that. So just to give some parameters of how this affects a taxpayer with a value of $100,000 on the bottom of 12, I did last year's rate of $1,573. with last year's rollback. So if you want to look at a residential, last year, the residential tax for 100,000 was $830.81. Now, if you look at the new rate, no, I'm sorry, I left it at the same rate with the different rollbacks. So if the rate was the same, the residential would have raised to $855. Is that clear? Okay. Because I kind of messed up the explanation, but it's there.
No, why does it go up?
Because the rollback increased. It went from 52.81 to 54.4. Regardless of anything else, the rollback changed for residential. So even if we left tax rate the same, the taxes for 100,000 would go up $25.
Okay.
Okay? And then you see the decrease in commercial from 1573 to 1494 and so on for agricultural drops as well. So at the bottom of page 13 is the example for the proposed rate of 1598 with the new rollback would make it 100,000 property value at $869.32. So it would go up about $14 for 100,000 value. Does that make sense?
But the total goes from 830 to 869.
Because of the tax rate and because the rollback change, which we don't have any control over.
But to compare apples to apples, you have to compare last year's, you have to compare the 855 number to the 869. Wow, is what he's saying, because no matter what, the rollback is different.
Well, but if you're a taxpayer, you're going to end up paying 869 instead of 830.
Yeah, you're right.
Because
nobody's going to pencil that out.
What it does is it shifts the burden. You see a commercial, though commercial goes from 100%
See,
to
we are
95.
different than municipalities,
Yeah.
counties. They have the valuation and they apply the rate to it. We get a value that we tax for.
Yeah.
And then how it's divided is dependent on the rollbacks, how much each section pays. So
In the commercial has now gone down.
Right.
Yeah, but but the commercial is such a big The commercial is such a big part.
So the other part besides the tax rate is the total expenditures, and I did give you
Stay away from that. So I'm hitting you.
I did give you a detailed budget form. This front page is what will show up in the Courier this week, showing what is spent in actual in 13, what's reassessed for 14 in the middle column, and then the total expenditures for 2015. And this is all the funds dumped together. This is not just the general fund. If you want to go to the detail, that is behind on page 3 and 4 is 2015's detail by fund. And you can see how each one is addressed. And then that is, you can look back too on 7 and 8, 9 and 10 that have 14 and 13 on there as well, if you want to look by funds, how they have changed. So the number that we are looking at tonight as far as approval, the recommendation is on line 36. The total expenditures of all funds is $161,364,989, and it's broken down by all the different funds above that. So to review timelines, tonight's action is just setting the upper limits. It will be published, and that will be brought back to the board for final approval on April 14th. And then on April 15th, it goes to the county auditor, and then approximately May 5th is the last opportunity for the board to adjust the numbers lower if they choose to do so.
So just to be clear, Michael, there'd be two opportunities on the 14th or the 5th that those could be.
Yes.
Or the 28th, I guess. We
Yeah, you could do it anytime in between
Anytime,
that.
yes.
that's what
Yeah.
I'm, okay.
That's
Thank you.
that's the limit for the county auditor to
Okay.
say one last chance, and I'm
To change.
locking them in.
Drop it.
And I-
So what events would allow us to reduce the levy?
A year ago, when we urged you to come in high and then cut back, we were waiting on a decision from the legislature. Now, the allowable growth, which is not called that anymore, it's called the supplemental state aid, has already been set for next year. So that's likely not going to change. It just feels like a better financial practice to know what the legislature's, how they're going to end up before we move forward. But if the board decided that you wanted to have less cash on hand, that would be a precipitating factor.
Michael, what will our cash reserves be at 15.98?
Can you say that again?
What's the total of our cash reserves at $15.98?
It's 850,000.
Okay. And what would the total be?
Right, 850 for that.
Yeah, 850 for the next year, but what's the cumulative? Because that's probably as important as, puts everything in perspective.
We were at about $4 million at the end of 13. We were $8.6 million the year before, and then we dipped.
Gotcha.
At the end of 14, I'm projecting we'll be in the 7 to 8 million again. So then that will help that situation. It's hard to say that money will just sit there as cash reserve, because what happens is we get students in that weren't counted the year before, and we need to spend money on those. That's what the cash reserve does. And then we don't get to collect that money back until the following year. So it's a rolling target. We have ELL expenditures for this year of approximately $1 million over budget that we use cash reserve to operate that program and then collect it from SBRC in authority at the end of the year. So to say that money's just there sitting, that's not the case.
Well, and it is liquid, though. We do use it.
We do use it.
Getting to Lyle's point, though, is there can we do, and to use the phrase again, an apples-to-apples comparison as to years past on, let's say, April 15th? It's been X amount. We can use that to
Well, if you want to
extrapolate and
look
figure out
at the
where we are.
financial
And then
statements.
this year, we would come out at April 15th and see what it is this year.
On page 46 of your board packet, that's probably the best idea I can give you to answer that question. The top chart on page 46 is the amount of cash we have in the bank as we go through the year. And you can see where paydays are, where it dips down and then we kind of build back up when state aid and property tax kick in. But cash reserve funds, because we were took quite a hit with that 10 million a few years ago, we've had to borrow money. We've done short term with the local bank. We've done ice cap early in the school year, August, September. We have some times that we dip below zero. That's building back up. So I'm hoping that won't be the case next year. But if you want to look over into April, that's right before we get, in April, we get one of our big property tax checks. So that bounces us back up into the $15 to $20 million range of what's in the bank. But then that basically has to last till the next September. So to pick one day and say what's your cash reserve, you really have to look at how it's trending all year. It's an important factor that it stays positive all year.
Yeah.
I understand that, and I know it's flexible, but there is a point that we do not want it to go under, correct?
Well, we have a board policy on it.
The measurements that we deal with board policy are the unspent authority. We may have authority there. It was one of the first graphs that I showed you where the fund balance and the authorized balance was pretty close. And I said they should be about equal, or the fund balance should be higher. That means we have a little more money in there than what our authority is. So that's kind of a critical measure that we're trying to build back to.
Okay. One other question is to kind of switch gears on this a little bit. Is total property tax askings? So
Yes.
maybe that's in here and under going at 1598 to 1573 from last year, or levy rate last year. Is that in one of the slides here?
It is. It's on page 11
11.
at the bottom. So
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
that's what you're looking
Gotcha.
for?
Yep.
Okay.
That's it. I'm sorry. I was looking at the top of the first line of the numbers are different in the first line of the notice of public hearing. The very top, it's the line is taxes levied on property.
They will be the same for, if you take 1 and 2 lines, that's the number for 2015 at 1598 that I scribbled out and corrected.
Okay.
But the other two are not going to match exactly because we have delinquent property tax, we have,
Okay.
it doesn't come into the exact dollar that we ask for. But those were the amounts that we published the last 2 years.
Okay.
So that is the amount that we are entitled to.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
So there's no state relief of the residential rollback?
No.
Guess the thing that bothered, it looks to me, if I'm looking at this correctly, the average homeowner is going to pay about 4%, a little more. That seems like a pretty steep rise. Maybe we could look at how we're coming on the ABC cost savings projects as before we finalize this thing the next time.
Where are you getting 4%?
I'm
Well, I took the 869, I think it was, compared to the 830. So that's a $38 increase on,
On 100,000.
well, on what they paid last year. They paid 830. So if you increase 830 by 30-some dollars, it's about 4%.
What I'm laughing at, it'd be nice to lower, if you could spell it out with residential, and then we'd raise our property tax rate on commercial by 5%, and you could
Well, that's
lower,
but-
yeah,
but I
and
mean,
that's what it is.
It's mostly a result of the rollback.
Yeah, the rollback, yeah.
So I mean,
And ag, too. You don't forget ag is down significantly. Yeah, ag dropped a lot. Yeah, the tax askings are less, but it's higher for
Yeah.
residences, yeah.
I agree with you, it doesn't matter, and you're still paying.
You still have to pay the money.
so that rollback to the property owner, those same percentages going to apply to the other components, the city and the county?
Yeah, it's a county thing. So the same rollback would apply regardless of which tax you're paying.
So that's going to be across the board on homeowners.
That goes until the legislature changes that again?
I don't know.
What was the logic of the change in the rollback?
The rollback has changed almost every year for like 20 years. It's not I don't know the story behind it actually.
So is it by formula of some kind, the reason it changes, or do they just,
I don't know.
somebody picks a
Well,
number?
I can find that out.
I don't know.
But I know it's changed every year that I've been doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
We have to ask questions until his voice is gone.
Is that the strategy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Filibuster here. Again, this is the first step in the process, and we'll revisit it. What we'll do, as we've done in years past, is at least give an update every board meeting of kind of where we are in the process before setting it finally. But this sets the ceiling and sets it published.
You know, we're waiting on state,
Yeah.
that to send it from the state, which we are fortunate to have that.
Correct. Okay, if there's no further questions or discussion? If not, we'll vote on the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us on to the next item on the agenda, which is our board policy changes. And Tara Thomas is here, who chairs the School District Policy Committee. We have 3 board policies on the agenda tonight. They're up for first reading. And this is Exhibit K that starts on page 36 of our board packet. The 3, again, this is just for first reading, so it's for information only. These are board policies number 108.0 regarding educational and operational planning, number 209.1, which is board staff communications, and then finally board policy 217.0 regarding school board association memberships. And with that, Tara, I'll turn it over to you to talk about the proposed, really, amendments to these.
So minor changes. The first one, educational and operational planning, is striking the school community network language, which is taking out a brand and name, essentially. On the board staff one,
Gotcha.
there's that sentence added in that defines clearly the intention of one of your visits to schools.
Oh, okay.
That you're not going to take over and run the school by any means, that you're simply visiting
Okay.
to become
Yes.
familiar with the facility, not seek out or solve problems, take over management, serve as an advocate for a particular school, or become an evaluator. And the last change to school board association memberships is striking maintain and active and replace it with annually review.
You can't grade papers or anything?
And I'd like to change. I didn't know it was the board policy in 217 regarding school board association, because that's been timely with Iowa Association of School Boards every year. I think it is wise to annually review it.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
maintain it active. So it was close. It was touch and go for a couple of years while they went through some issues. Are there any questions or further discussion? Again, these are generally amending policies. Modifying them. If not, Tara, thank you for waiting patiently during the board meeting. And if there are questions over the next 3 weeks till our next board meeting, please direct them to Tara.
Sure.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then the last item on our agenda, it's not for action, but just for information only, is monthly financial information. Mr. Coughlin, if you have any voice left.
I would prefer to just say you've seen these many times
Yes,
before. If you
okay,
have any
fair enough.
particular questions, please let me know.
Okay. Sounds good. And this is Exhibit L in our board packet from page 42. I guess 46, and kind of an update where things are. With that, that concludes the action items on our agenda. And next, it's time for the superintendent's report, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Norris.
And I want to thank Kristen and the WEA folks for taking a second look at the Good Friday issue, and we're gonna. I talked to Kristen out in the hall. We're gonna set up a meeting very quickly, sometime this week. We're gonna iron out whatever concerns they had, because those were some of the same concerns we had about what staff we were going to consider essential to operate a school day, number one. Number two, what it was going to cost to do this. And was there a cost benefit to children by, and this is a very unique year in that it carried over to a Monday. That doesn't happen very often, so I appreciate everybody's flexibility, and I think it'll be better for students and teachers and everybody, but we're going to make sure we address all of the things that that were the yes buts, I guess is a good way of saying it. And if not, they still could say no. But I think we're going to be able to solve every concern.
It sounds like it's kind of 50-50 to me. I'm okay either way. If we default to the normal, that's fine. If we can make arrangements, that's fine too.
Yeah. Okay. And I think the issue is, and I'll just speak to it now, and then we'll go through. Dr. Norris, I'm sorry. Did you have anything else?
No.
Okay. No. Just on that, it is a unique situation. It's a bad situation when you have 5 snow days in a year. Nobody wanted that. We're all in the situation where school, as Dr. Norris said, because we got the 5th snow day, put school to Monday, June 9th, which would mean teachers would be in till Tuesday, June 10th. And that's later. And then the thought is, what's best to have school on June 9th, or are there any other days during the year that students could have it? It was discussed, I think Shanley brought it up maybe as early as late January about the possibility. At that time, it was before we had a professional development day in February, and that didn't work. I think it was too late. There were speakers that were coming in, staff were scheduled, and everything was done. And so the discussions were there any other days? And it was Good Friday. So it's not a good situation for anybody. Nobody wants to be in it where you have 5 snow days and the horrible weather we've had this winter. It's just trying to figure out the right thing to do and what's right for kids. Lyle, I would say for me the issue is really whether, and I'm thinking of it from a parent, whether students will learn more on April 18th than they will on June 9th in a classroom day. And I think they would. I think it's worthwhile to look into. But I appreciate everybody, and especially the WEA, even looking into it and considering it, how we can, if we can, make it work.
Well, and I think when we look at that, we need to look at what is the best education for our students.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if we at all can put value to that, is it better to have a continual in April or to go on a Monday in June? I mean,
Yeah.
I think we need to
I
look
think
at
that's
what
what it
is the
comes down
best
to.
for our students.
Elementary and then secondary as well. So.
But we will we'll meet shortly and report back to you shortly, and then we'll finalize it so people can know.
And then we'll try to get the information out as quickly as we can
Right.
to parents and staff, to everybody as best we can, because it does affect a lot of people and a lot of planning.
Well, it'll
whether
probably
it's
be done via email because of the timeliness of it.
Yeah.
Be what?
Email, or how are we going to
Sure,
communicate
absolutely.
that?
because it's going to school on one day or another. It'll affect travel plans, other things, whether it's April 18th or June 9th. Yeah, both. And hopefully we have no more bad weather. Because if we have a 6 snow day, like everybody might move. Yes.
And the big
Dr. Norris,
question
there's
in
nothing
that,
else?
how many days do the seniors have to make up?
They don't have to make any up, do they?
I don't believe so.
I think seniors are the only ones that are exempted, right?
they're looking at that, though. I don't think that's a done deal. It's a done deal?
I think isn't it that everybody generally wants the seniors to go? But honestly, that it's just best to get them out.
Personally, I get that question every day from my daughter, so I'm talking on a personal note.
Well, let's have a little fun with it.
I'll tell her she's
Dr.
got to
Norris
make
that
it.
she has to make up
5 of them.
Yes.
And that's just for her custom.
Yeah. I guess at this time, information from school board members, and I can start with Lyle Schmidt.
Okay.
Or I can start with Andrea too. Do you want?
Yeah.
Andrea, are you? I'm putting you on the spot. This is the last thing you have to do.
Is it snowing there?
It was today. Andrea's in Arizona right now.
Oh boy.
It's in the mid 80s every day.
Yeah. So no, I don't have anything tonight.
Okay. Thank you for and Andrea. I'll just thank you for participating. I know it's not easy sitting there, you can't follow along.
It is different when you're doing it on conference call.
Yeah, and we were looking at
But-
photos of the bus garage and all that. I know it's tough to follow
Well,
along.
I
but thank
had
you.
my iPad up and I was looking on Google Maps. So
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, that worked out well.
Well, thank you, and have safe travels back, too.
Next
Okay,
time
thank you.
we'll FaceTime you or something.
Yes.
Skype.
Yes. And Mike Kinchy.
Nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. And Lyle Schmidt. Now,
I had two things. One is I have to get on my annual soapbox about the last day of school. If you really want to be effective, you don't close the libraries early. You don't pull the books early. We can do inventories after the last day of school. So I would ask, that's never been honored before, but it just drives me nuts. You go in. Yeah, 20th probably. But it really does. In this day and age, this whole inventory, we got to inventory the books, so we got to pull the textbooks, we got to close the library. I don't buy any of that, just for the record. Okay. That's more important than whether they go at all on that last day in which they do nothing. So that's my 2 cents on that. Congratulations, Dr. Norris, on your recognition, and
Thank you.
And thanks so much to Anna May. You know, she's such an icon and has so much history. Well, she is history.
Yeah.
She
And
is.
so that has to be just a great feeling to
It
get
is.
recognized by that.
Thank
So,
you.
Congratulations.
thank you, Lyle. And Shayla McNally.
I got to wear my music hat again. A week ago, Thursday night, I had the pleasure of going to the middle schools, did a concert for orchestra, honor orchestra, 6th through 8th grade, and then 8th grade bands, and all 3 middle schools sent kids. And it was just an awesome performance. And one of the things I thought was really striking, as much as we've talked about music at this table and some of the changes that we've made, were that both conductors commented about how well prepared these students were, how I've worked with lots and lots of different, groups, and these guys were ready. They knew their music. So a huge testament to our
Could you
middle
say
school.
that once again, please? Just a little slower, a little louder.
So a huge testament to our middle school programs, because they obviously are working, and the sound that night was really great. So really cool. They practiced one day together and came together, those 3 schools, and I was really proud to be a band mom. So there you go.
Great. Thank you. And Sue Flynn.
I just want to hope everyone had a spring break, a good spring break, a good spring break, and to come back rejuvenated and ready to go for this final term, and do our best and work towards that. Secondly, I wanted to thank all the teachers and club advisors that go on trips with these students. I know the West Band just got back, an orchestra with 150 kids to Florida. That would not be something I'd ever want to do. And I want to just thank those teachers that is just awesome to give of your time and your energies, because some of those kids have never been out of the state of Iowa. So and even the BPA going to D.C. and the culinary and, the trips that we have, it seems like it's a lot of money, but it is really an education for those students. And then lastly, I just wanted to thank all the Cunningham parents and grandparents and staff for their support, and I just want to encourage them that change is very hard, but sometimes change is what we need. I just think when Cunningham went to the uniforms, the first school in the district to do that, and then we followed suit, and that was hard, but these changes all happen over time, and I just want to encourage them that change is not always bad.
Thank you, Sue. And Angela Weekly.
I actually have 2 things. One that Jane gave me, and the other one is as a new board member, with the parents and the concerns of the Cunningham parents. I think that I'm very honored and very, very excited to be a part of this board and a part of the school district that really took attention and paid attention to that and provided us with the information that we needed to make a good decision, as well as all the board members who did the extra research and the parents who brought in extra research and sent that on. I'm very honored and excited, and I think that we all have all kids and our best interest. With that said, check with your buildings with your buildings for exam times because next week Iowa assessment starts on Monday.
Oh, yes.
So make sure we're getting our kids fed and orange juice and watered up,
Yeah.
and rested,
Assessment,
sleep.
yeah.
So Monday.
Yes. Angela, thank you very much. And yes, it was a very
By the
good
way, I'll
reminder.
yield all of my future superintendent reports to Dr. Lindemann.
Be careful. Yes, be careful what you wish for. Yeah. Well, thank you all. That is a good reminder. The Iowa assessments are on starting next week, starting Monday district-wide. Okay. Yeah.
So you check with your building to see
Gotcha.
exactly
Okay.
what it is.
Fair enough. Okay.
Next 3 weeks.
Great. Thank you. And with that, our next regular school board meeting is in 3 weeks. Now it's Monday, April 14th at 6 p.m. It'll be here in the boardroom. If there's nothing further, to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. We're adjourned. Thank you all.